Karlsruhe, Germany, an endearing city in the heart of Europe. The people of southern Germany are among the friendliest anywhere, and many were great inventors and innovators. For example, this is the home of the first bicycle and of the first Mercedes-Benz automobile. Especially attractive are the beautiful green, relaxing grounds throughout the city. Karlsruhe has the most parks and gardens of anywhere in Europe. Did you know that before becoming president, Thomas Jefferson visited Europe, and while here, he studied the architecture of Karlsruhe. Many of the design elements were integrated into the design of Washington, D.C. For example, all the streets radiate from the Capitol, and in Karlsruhe, they radiate from the magnificent palace. The largest company in Karlsruhe is Pfaff Sewing Machine Corporation, the biggest manufacturer of sewing machines, famous for high quality and innovative technology worldwide. The Pfaff Creative 1475 CD opens a whole new world of sewing for all your crafts and wearables. Create a look as bold as your imagination with an incredible palette that challenges your creativity.
Welcome back to part 2 of our video. Crystal and I are anxious to show you some more advanced technique on your Creative 1475 CD.
That's right, Philip. We'll show you how to design, how to enter your own original designs. We'll work with some of the optional accessories, do some cross-stitching and some border embroideries.
But don't forget heirloom sewing and free motion embroidery and cutwork. Those are a few of my favorite things to do. But let's look at how you design your own pea memories first. Crystal, you have some beautiful samples there. Could you tell us a little about them?
Sure, Philip. This is a pillow we saw in volume 1 of our video, and we've given you everything except the bluebells. That's a pea memory available in volume 2 of your Pfaff Club magazine. And here is a copy of some Swiss insertion on this blouse. That's available in volume 1 of the Pfaff Club magazine. And those, by the way, are available at your Pfaff dealer.
Those look really intricate. Would it be difficult for a first-time try?
I think so. So we've started with a simpler shape, this diamond on our graph paper. I've marked the 4 points of my diamond with a dot. I've also marked a dot between each point for a total of 8 dots or stitches. Each stitch has a set of 2 coordinates, B and L. B refers to stitch width and L to stitch length. It's easier if we have the same coordinates, so I'll read them to you so you can copy them on your graph paper. I've numbered all the stitches starting with the bottom one. So, starting with stitch number 1, the B coordinate is 0, 0, the L coordinate is 27. For stitch number 2, the B is 14 and the L 14. For stitch number 3, the B is 27 and the L 0, 0. For stitch number 4, the B is 41 and the L is 14. For stitch number 5, the B is 54 and the L is 27. For stitch number 6, the B is 41 and the L is 41. For stitch number 7, the B is 27 and the L is 54. For stitch number 8, the B is 14 and the L is 41. For stitch number 9, the B is 00 and the L is 27. Connect all the dots and number them in order. This will make it easier to follow along with me. Now let's insert the graph into the CD. On each side of the CD there is a clip. Move the clips towards you. Insert the graph paper into the front slot like this. Now you must align the graph by moving the magnifier slide around the opening and adjusting the graph so that the red cross tracks along the outer lines of the graph. When it is aligned, lock it into place by moving the clips away from you. Make sure your machine is turned off and then connect the CD by inserting the plug into the socket on the left side of the machine. Now turn your machine on. Look at the display window. It's asking for an M memory program card number, but we want a P memory. Use the left program keys on the machine to select the P memories. Now I'll use the right program keys to select an empty P memory. Oh, good. P1 is empty. Now we need to open the memory in order to enter our design, and to do this, we simply touch the Mem- key on the machine. The display now shows BOOLOO, or rather B00, L00, our coordinates. In the right-hand corner is a flashing dot and the number 1. This means that the machine is ready to accept the first set of coordinates. Before we enter any coordinates, there is one more very important step. Move the magnifier slide around the edge of the rectangle once, stopping in the lower left corner. Your display window will show B00, L00. This step orients the CD with the computer in your machine, and it should always be done whenever you plug in the CD. Now there are 2 keys on the CD. The left key is the Mem+ key, and it's used to enter coordinates into the memory. The right key is the memory key, and it's used to search for and then display a specific stitch. We'll use it later when we add and delete stitches, but for now let's start entering stitches. Move the slide to stitch number 1. Press the Mem+ key to enter. Now to stitch number 2 and press Mem+. 3, Mem+, 4, Mem+, 5, Mem+, 6, Mem+, 7, Mem+, 8, Mem+, and finally 9 and Mem+. Your display window should read P1, B00, L27, flashing dot in front of the number 10. Remember that the flashing dot signifies that 9 stitches have been entered and the machine is ready to enter the 10th stitch. Now touch the memory key on the machine to tell the computer we're ready to sew our design. The display changes to show the program width, length, and balance. The machine now treats P1 with our original design just like any other built-in stitch. We can change the width, the length, and the balance, and we can put it into an M memory and combine it with other stitches. For now, let's just sew it. Remember to engage the single pattern key or the design will repeat on top of itself. It came out perfect. Now let's delete a stitch. First, access the P memory by pressing the Mem- key on the machine. Now, I'm going to delete stitch number 5 located at the top of the graph up here. First, go around the outside of the designer with the magnifier and then slide it over stitch number 5 and press the memory key on the designer, not the one on the machine. Look at the display window. The computer has searched for and then displayed the stitch coordinates and the stitch number. To delete the stitch, just press the Mem- key. See what happened? The stitch was erased and every stitch following it has now been moved down in sequence by 1 number. These coordinates, B41 and L14, are the coordinates for stitch number 4. Let's sew the design and see what happened. Don't forget to press the memory and the single pattern keys. Let's sew. The top isn't there. That's the stitch we took out. Let's replace it now. First, access the P memory by pressing the Mem- key on the machine. Go around the outside once, then move the magnifier slide over stitch number 4. When you want to make an insertion, you must go to the stitch before the place where you want to make the insertion. Then press the memory key on the Creative Designer, not the one on the machine. Look at the display window. The computer has searched for and displayed the stitch coordinates for stitch number 4. Now, move the slide magnifier to the place where you wish to insert a new stitch. In this case, it's the number 5 point on our graph. Then press the Mem+ key on the Creative Designer to enter the new coordinates. Look at the display window. It now shows B54, L27, and 5. The 5th stitch is back in the machine in the correct spot, and all the stitches following it have moved up one number or position. Let's sew it. Don't forget to press the memory key and engage the single pattern key. Watch. The diamond is complete. The top point is back in place.
You explained that very well, Crystal. You do so much work with the P memories that I'm sure you have some shortcut or special tip that you could share with us.
I sure do, Philip. For example, spacing is something to keep in mind when you're designing your graphs. The actual width of the graph is 2 inches. This is important to keep in mind when you're Xeroxing or tracing designs that are, say, larger or smaller than the graph paper. The width is numbered 00 through 54 and increases in number by 2. Therefore, 6 numbers, or 3 boxes, equals a stitch width of 1 millimeter wide. And that holds true for stitch length as well. That's important when you're deciding where to make your stitch points, especially on an outline design. Something I have found in my experience also is the fewer stitch points, the better. Now, if you're working with a lot of satin stitching, it's better to design your satin stitching to go the width of the graph rather than the length of the graph.
Those are good hints, Crystal. I also copied the coordinates onto a card. That way, when it's time for me to empty a memory to enter a new design, I don't have to retrace the old one. It also saves me time if I'm working with an intricate design and ensures that it will be just like the original.
That's true, Philip. But for now, let's go on to something different. How about sharing with us some of your heirloom sewing techniques?
Those are some of my favorite methods in sewing. Since we work with very delicate fabric like organdy and batiste, we need special seams and finishes. One of those is called rolling and whipping. When I use that method, I like to use our applique foot. This foot is totally clear and has very short toes. If you look at the underside, you'll notice a groove that allows cording or pearl cotton to feed smoothly under the foot. Let's go to the machine. Snap on the applique foot and select program number 10, the zigzag stitch. Reduce the stitch length to 1.5 and increase the width to 4.0. Place the fabric under the foot so that the raw edge is centered between the toes. The left swing of the needle will stitch into fabric and the right swing will go off. It is the stitch that's formed in the air that rolls the fabric. Watch. A neat edge and so easy when you know how. If you want more stability, you can roll and whip over several threads or pearl cotton. I prefer pearl cotton. I'll show you. Place the fabric under the foot the same way as before with the pearl cotton on top of the raw edge. The groove will guide the pearl cotton under the foot. The pearl cotton is encased in the rolled edge. The pearl cotton edge is great for a scarf or shawl hem. It also makes bridging easier.
I knew you had another technique up your sleeve, Philip. Tell us about bridging.
Bridging is the joining of 2 pieces of fabric together with an open or feather stitch. Here I have an example of bridging. Notice the clean rolled edges and the lacy look in between. The lacy look in between is the bridging. I like to use our 7-groove cording foot for this technique. We also have a 5-groove foot, but the 7 works better. I have prepared 2 rolled and whipped edges with pearl cotton here. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you how to do bridging. Place the fabric under the presser foot so that the rolled edges are in the first grooves to the left and right of center groove. Select program number 29. The width must be reduced to 5.0 so that you don't break a needle. Change the length to 3.0. The grooves will guide the fabric an even distance apart and at just the right spot for the needle to catch the fabric at the left and right swings. Watch. Isn't that beautiful?
I'll have to try your method of bridging, Philip. I have a different method, though. I use the cording blade to help me guide the fabric. This is a cording blade, and they come in a set of 2. They're marked with a number 1 or a number 2 on the underside. I use the number 1 blade along with foot number 2A. I also work on a fold rather than a rolled hem. We'll select stitch number 168 and set the width at 9 millimeters. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you. I've snapped on the cording blade into the hole in the front of the presser foot, and I'm going to guide the 2 pieces of fabric along either side of the widest part of the cording blade right here. Watch. And there you have it. It's a different method and look, but just as pretty. And my way allows you to use a 9 millimeter wide stitch for the bridging.
Yes, and you could use program number 48 and 33. While we're talking about the cording feet and the cording blades, why don't we look at pin tucks? This collar is a beautiful example of pin tucks. I'll use a 2.0 double needle. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you how now. First, you'll want to snap off the needle plate and thread the pearl cotton through the little round hole. You have to watch the pearl cotton in front of the machine as you're sewing because it can easily tangle or get caught on something. I've already sewn my first row, and I have a guide for all the others. You can sew as many rows as you like.
Sometimes I don't want a filler cord in my pin tuck, Philip, so I use the cording blade. I use the number 1 blade with a 7-groove foot and the number 2 blade with a 5-groove foot. You simply snap the blade into the same hole where the pearl cotton was traveling and sew your pin tucks as usual. The result will be a deeper pin tuck without the bulk that the pearl cotton adds because the blade keeps the fabric up between the 2 needles. I sew them down blouses where I don't want the stiffness of a corded tuck.
Crystal, you can even sew curved pin tucks. The only thing you can't do is turn a sharp corner with the needles in the fabric because they'll twist and you might break one of them.
That's a good idea anytime you're sewing with twin needles, Philip. And this stitch here, this looks like expensive entreduex. How did you do that?
That's a built-in stitch right out of the machine. The only thing you have to do is use a wing needle, and this is a wing needle. Viewing it from the front, it looks like it has wings around the needle eye. This wide extension will make holes in the fabric as you sew. It's the hole that the wing needle makes that gives you that very special look. The wing needle works best with 100% natural fibers, those that are sheer to medium in weight. If you're in doubt about the needle's compatibility to the fabric, take your needle to the fabric shop and punch a hole in it. If the hole stays, then the fabric will be fine. However, if it disappears, it won't work. The wing needle comes in 2 sizes, number 100 and 120. I use both sizes. Let's go to the machine and sew a sample. I've selected program number 168. I've reduced the stitch width to 3.0 and shortened the length to 2.5. It's a very elegant stitch. I also like to use program number 169, but first I changed the width to 3.5 and the length to 2.5. And Crystal, I have another hint for you. If your fabric is limp, several coats of spray starch will help stabilize it before you do the wing needlework. It also helps to stabilize natural fabrics before doing automatic embroidery patterns.
That's a good idea, Philip. And I have one more idea I'd like to share before we leave heirloom sewing and go on to other things. That's a special type of pin stitch. This is a very versatile stitch. It can be used for joining, say, lace to fabric, or in quilting for an invisible applique stitch, or in this sample, shadow applique. Choose program 14, the one that looks like the blanket stitch. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you. I'm using a standard needle again and program 14. Change the stitch width to 3.0 and engage the pattern mirror key and the twin needle key as well. Watch. See what a neat tiny stitch this is? The trick to making this stitch narrow enough is the twin needle key. When you engage the twin needle key, you reduce any stitch by 2 millimeters. Now, program 14 can only be manually reduced to 2.0 millimeters, but by engaging the twin needle key, we can reduce it to 1 millimeter. Here's an example using program 14. The row on the left was manually reduced to the minimum width, 2 millimeters. The row on the right was only manually reduced to 3 millimeters. Then the twin needle key was engaged, making this row 1 millimeter in width.
That's a neat trick, Crystal. I'm going to experiment with that one. Next, I'm going to show you how to do free motion cut work with Richelieu bars. This design I've sewn on this collar is an example of cut work. In the open spaces are thread lines or bars. These are the Richelieu bars. Not only do they look good, but they help the cut areas to hold their shape. A hoop is very important when doing cut work. The fabric should be very tight. I like to use the spring hook.
And I prefer the wooden embroidery hoop. It has a little screw I can use to tighten it down.
Whichever hoop you prefer to use, a backing is very important, and water-soluble works best. This is what it looks like.
It looks like plastic food wrap, but it dissolves completely in water. If you don't rinse it out all the way, though, it will leave a starched feel to your projects. There are some projects you may want to have that starched feel.
Crystal, let's look at how we set up. First, place the outer ring of the embroidery hoop on a flat surface. Now, 2 layers of water-soluble backing and your fabric on top of that, and the inner ring. The first thing we'll do is sew around this with a very narrow zigzag stitch of about 1.0. I like to use the darning foot. The darning foot is a standard accessory that comes with your machine. Notice the little clip that comes up and away from it, and the silver clip coming out from the little black box. To attach the darning foot, loosen the screw at the back of the presser foot, but don't take it all the way out. Insert the silver pin into the hole at the back of the foot. Make sure the clear finger is behind the needle clamp. Now tighten the screw. Your Pfaff Creative has a special position on the presser bar lifter for free motion work and darning. This is down for normal sewing and up to remove the work. The darning position is located in between those two. As you lower the presser bar lifter, push slightly to the back and it'll drop into this position. Now that we've looked at the darning position, let's move on to our cut work. Select program number 10 and set the width at 1.0. Don't forget to lower the presser bar lifter into the darning position. Our first step with cut work is to stitch around our design line with this narrow zigzag stitch. After stitching, our next step is to trim away the fabric carefully on the inside of the line. Then, to make our Richelieu bars, we'll go back to program 00, our straight stitch. Lower the presser bar and be sure you stitch enough into the fabric to secure these threads. Stitch across and then back. To complete the Richelieu bar, select program 10 again and set the width at 2.0. Sew over the 2 previous stitching rows. Good. Now, to complete the cut work, set the machine on program 10 with a width of 3.0 and satin stitch around all the raw edges. Good. Give this a try. When you've completed your cut work, tear away as much of the water-soluble backing as possible. What's left will then dissolve in water. Then press face down on a towel so that you don't crush the satin stitching. In fact, it'll raise it up somewhat.
Oh, Philip, that's beautiful. I love the open look of cut work. I also like eyelets, though.
Crystal, you do like shortcuts, but really I like the open look of eyelets also.
Shortcuts they may be, but here's a collar with a variety of eyelets. They were lots of fun. And this is the eyelet plate. This is an accessory available for your Pfaff 1475 CD. Another thing that's important when you're doing eyelets is a hoop. It will keep your fabric tight and also make it easier to rotate when you do your eyelets. You place your fabric in the hoop just as Philip did for cut work, although you don't necessarily need a stabilizer unless your fabric is very flimsy. Let's go to the machine and put on the eyelet plate. Remove the presser foot and the ankle. I've already done this so you can see better. Then simply hold the plate so you can read the number and the post is on the left. Then simply slip the back prongs under the feed dog openings and the front prong over the needle plate. You'll feel it snap into place. I also like to lower my feed dogs. Now with your fabric in the hoop, I've marked with a wash-away marker where I want my eyelets. Then I'll take a pair of scissors and poke a hole at each point. Now, place the hole over the post and gently push it down until it's flat against the plate. Select program 11 and change the width to 2 millimeters. Also, engage the mirror image key because we want the needle in the left position. Take one stitch to bring the bobbin thread to the top and move it out of the way. Also, lower the presser bar into the darning position because it's easy to forget when the ankle and the foot is off. Place your hands on the hoop in a position that makes it easy for you to rotate the hoop and stitch around your eyelet. If you sew too slow or move the hoop too fast, you won't get a good satin stitch, but you can always go around it again. You know, Philip, you could use a lot of different decorative stitches to enhance your eyelets. For example, here we've used program 61, our scallop. And this is program 16, a blind hem stitch. And this is a zigzag using the left, center, and right needle position. You could try any stitch. You might be surprised by the results. The only stitches that won't work are those with reverse action. The feed dogs are lowered, you're moving the fabric only in one direction, so the reverse stitches and the forward stitches are all being sewn forward.
I'm going to show you a totally different eyelet. This is a loopy thread eyelet. I use ribbon floss or ribbon thread. You may have used this in your serger or your bobbin case before. It's a bias woven ribbon about 1/4 inch wide. So Crystal, let's hoop up our fabric and go have some fun with some ribbon eyelets. Make your hole and place it over the post. Select program 11 and width 2.0. Don't forget to engage the mirror image and needle down key. Sew a few stitches and stop with the needle down. Now place the ribbon across the eyelet stitches. Take a couple of stitches to secure the end. Bring the ribbon over to the stitches to form a loop on the outside. Sew several more stitches. Now form another loop and secure. Continue in this manner until you complete the eyelet. These eyelets are really fun to do. You can make them any length you want, short or long. The shorter length shows the eyelet off more. You can also make these eyelets onto water-soluble backing. When you're through, tear away the backing, and then you can sew or glue them onto anything at all.
You sure could, Philip. That sounds like a lot of fun. But for now, let's continue with loops and the fringe foot. Here's an embroidered picture I made using rayon embroidery thread, 2 shades of orange, and a variegated shade. The design was an old iron-on transfer I used on my fabric, and I used the fringe foot, which is an extra accessory. Notice the blade or fin in the center of the foot. The zigzag stitches are sewn over this fin and then fall out from the back. This is how the fringe loops are formed. To mark your flower placement, draw the outer circumference of your fringe flower. Fringe flowers are always sewn from the outer edge toward the center. You can use a spool of thread or an unreeling disc. Those both make very good size flowers. Then select program 10, set the width at 2, and because we want very dense flowers, we'll set our stitch length at 0.25. Let's go to the machine and sew. I've centered the foot on the line, and now I'll complete sewing the outside ring. Now that I've reached my starting place, I'll guide the foot so the next ring will be as close to the first as you can get. The foot will ride over the previous ring. You'll have to keep moving the fringe to the outside so you can see where you're sewing. As the circle gets smaller in diameter, the stitches on the fin won't allow you to make nice small circles. You'll have to then stop often to remove the stitches on the fin like this. I've raised the presser foot and moved the fabric away until the stitches have been dislodged. I'll lower the foot and continue sewing like this until the circle is filled. Cute, huh? This is such an impressive technique and so easy to do. Now you may have noticed some yellow stitching in the center of my flowers. The easiest way to do this is to sew the centers first. I used program 127, and depending on the size of the fringe flower, I reduced the width to, say, 3 or 4 millimeters. That stitch reduces in length at the same time to keep the round shape. Mark the center of your circle, then sew all the centers, then go back and sew your fringe flowers. And here's another example using the fringe foot, and this is fringe foot bridging. I've done some bridging on my collar and on the pocket and the cuff of this blouse. It's so easy, and there's no extra fabric preparation. It's like sewing a seam. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you. I've selected program 160, reduced the width to 2 millimeters, and I've got the right sides of my fabrics together. I'm sewing right on the seam line. It looks a little strange, doesn't it? All loose and loopy. I'll now take the fabric and the seam allowance and open it as if I were going to press the seam open. See the bridging between the seam lines? Remember to change to the standard presser foot for regular sewing, or you're likely to break a needle or damage the fin in your fringe foot. This blouse fillip is made of a synthetic fiber that doesn't hold a sharp crease very well, so the top stitching was necessary to help keep the seam allowances away from the open work. On a natural fiber, a good starching and pressing would have done the job, but I like the look of the top stitching, so I use it a lot.
I really do like that method. It's a little bit more tailored, but so easy to do. Now I have a special accessory foot to show you. It's called the single needle cording foot or the 3-groove cording foot. I use this a lot to couch decorative threads. It's really very different looking than any foot we've used so far. It has one long toe on the left side of the foot. Just in front of the needle hole on the top of the foot are 2 grooves. On the underside, right in the middle, is just 1 groove. The cord fits into the groove of the presser foot and is held down as you sew. Let's select program number 67 and reduce the width to 6.0 millimeters. Go cut 3 strands of pearl cotton or some other thread and we'll sew this sample out. Engage the mirror image and needle down keys and take 1 stitch. Then lift the presser foot. The needle will remain in the fabric. Place a cord into the left groove of the top of the foot and then on to the back. Lower the presser foot and finish sewing the left square of the design and sew 1 stitch into the middle square. Lift the presser foot and insert the second cord into the groove under the foot. Finish sewing the middle square and 1 stitch into the next square. Lift the presser foot and place the third cord into the right groove on the top of the foot and under the back. Now all you have to do is sew. Just be careful when sewing that the cords don't tangle. This couching technique can be very effective with some of the other programs on your machine.
Here are just 3 examples. From the left, the first one is the one we just did. The second one is program 143. The third is program 13A.
Try experimenting with different types of cords as well as stitches. Just remember you need to always reduce the stitch width to 6 millimeters. Crystal, that's a pretty sample there. Could you tell us a little about it?
Sure, Philip. This is a bookmark with a rose embroidered on it, and all the leaves and the flower were done on the machine.
It looks really intricate. Was it difficult to do?
No, it wasn't difficult. It is delicate work, though, and requires a little time. It does go faster than hand cross-stitching. This flower pattern is from a hand cross-stitching book and was done on 11-count Aida cloth. The stitches fit into the holes exactly. I would recommend, though, starting on a plain weave-type fabric before you go on to the more difficult cross-stitch fabric after you have a little expertise.
Well, I think a little practice is a good idea because even I haven't done a lot with the cross-stitch beyond the basics. Can you tell us how you take a cross-stitch pattern and make it apply to the machine?
Sure. First, Philip, you must establish a starting point. And here in my monogram, I've decided to start the letter T here. I would then make a mark on my pattern and a corresponding mark on the fabric. Here I have a row of 8 double cross stitches. I would put those into memory. That's program number 70, and I would use an empty M memory. Let's go to the machine and do some sewing. I've snapped on presser foot 2A, and I'll sew the cross stitches along the guide marks. And don't forget to press the single pattern key so the machine can do the counting for you. Watch. Look at the way the crosses are sewn. It's very important to watch the direction of the crossover threads. On the top part of the T, notice that the top threads cross over from upper left to lower right. This crossover thread must be consistent throughout the embroidery. Next, we'll sew the stem of the letter T. There are 9 double cross stitches in this row, so I've entered 9 program 70 into an M memory, and I did use my mirror image key so the threads would cross in the right direction. Also, I'll lower my needle into my fabric right here where cross stitches 4 and 5 meet. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you. I've lowered the needle into the meeting point, and I've lowered the presser foot. I've also aligned the cross stitches with the red lines on the foot. I've pressed my single pattern key and we're ready to sew. There, the stem of the T is complete. Next, we'll sew the single cross stitches on either side of the T. For those, we'll use program 71 and we'll engage single pattern and mirror image. For the left cross stitch, we'll enter our needle here, and for the right cross stitch, here. Let's sew. Don't forget to align the cross stitches with the red marks on the foot. There, we're finished, and all the crosses are going in the same direction.
Crystal, if you're doing a real intricate embroidery pattern, how would you plan it out?
Well, Philip, it would be done the same way. It would just have more steps.
But if you don't want to tackle a large project, you can always create borders and medallions by entering stitches in the M memory like this one I've used before. This was program number 73 one time and 76 one time. I'm going to use a backing on this. So let's go to the machine and sew this out. Engage the needle down key and sew along your markings until you reach a corner. Stop by pressing the single pattern key. Then in another memory, enter program 77 2 times. Pivot the fabric 90 degrees and sew until the machine stops. Now, go back to the first memory and continue this sequence until you reach the starting point. It's just that easy. The key to this type of cross-stitching is knowing where the needle position is when you start or stop a pattern. If you look at the stitch chart on your machine or the instruction book, you'll notice that there are two sizes of cross-stitch patterns. Programs 73 through 79 are our smaller cross-stitch programs. Programs 70, 71, and 72 are our larger programs. Notice the circle at the top. They designate the needle position at the beginning of the stitch. At the bottom are the filled-in dots. This designates the end of the stitch program. Choose the cross-stitch that starts in the same needle position that the previous one ended in.
This will take a little planning, but you'll achieve the same great results that Philip did. Now we'd like to show you some embroideries straight off the machine. This one resembles the expensive Swiss insertion, and I call it ferns and daisies. I sewed the daisies right on top of the ferns. For all of these, we're using 100% organdy, although you could use 100% cotton batiste or a fine handkerchief linen. And as a stabilizer, we use spray starch. But you will want to use several applications because you'll want your fabric very stiff.
Yes, the spray starch works great as a stabilizer on natural fibers, but not so well on a synthetic, so test your fabric first. You'll also want to decide if you want to apply the insertion piece directly to the garment or make yards of insertion piece as we have here. We're going to make yards, so we've cut strips 2 inches wide, and I'm going to draw a line down the center to serve as a guide. So Crystal, tell us a little more about your project.
Sure, Philip. We'll start with the ferns. I took program 116, reduced the pattern length to 20, and put it into memory. I then mirrored it and entered it again. I'm using rayon thread because I like the shiny look it gives my embroidery. Let's go to the machine. I've placed my fabric under the presser foot so that the center mark on my strip was directly under the center red mark on the foot. I also like to engage the needle down button. That way, if I need to stop to adjust the feeding of the fabric, it won't shift at the needle position. Watch. There, part 1 is done. Now select program 118, change the width to 6 millimeters and the pattern length to 10. Enter that into an M-memory once. Then select program 00, change the length to 4.5, enter that into memory twice. Now in order for the daisies to be sewn in the proper position, it's very important where you begin sewing them. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you. Position the foot so that the connecting threads between the ferns is in front of the needle opening about 1/16 of an inch. And of course, the red mark on the foot is on the center line of the fabric. Watch. Isn't that pretty?
I like that one very much. I would clip the threads connecting the flowers only if they stood out too much. Do you have another one to show us?
Sure, Philip. And this one's very simple to sew as well. I call it leaves with double buds. It's a row of leaves with tiny flowers on either side. First, I sewed a row of program 112A down the center of my strip. Then I selected program 40 at a width of 3 millimeters and a length of 4. I entered that into an M memory once. Then, with program 00 set at a length of 3.5, I entered that into my memory once. Then onto the machine. Position the fabric so that the first stitch the needle takes is directly next to the stem that sticks out or next to the tip of a leaf, and guide the fabric so that the center red mark runs along the tips of the leaves. Watch. The other side is done in exactly the same manner. Now I would go back and clip the threads between the rosebuds. This is a time that the connecting threads would detract from the overall design. Philip, what's that embroidery you're holding?
This is a copy of an actual Swiss insertion. This memory sequence has a few more programs in it than the one you've shown us, but it's still simple. We're going to enter the programs that will allow us to sew the stems, leaves, and the center of the flower. Select program 110 and change the width to 6 millimeters and the length to 0.3, and change the pattern length to 9.0 by using the balance key. Enter it into memory once. Next, select program number 02 and keep the length at 2.5. Enter it into memory twice. Select program 110A again and change the width to 6 millimeters, the length to 0.3, and the pattern length using the balance key to 9.0. Enter it into memory once. Lastly, select program number 127 and change the width to 3.0, the length to 0.3. The pattern length will automatically change to 3.0 when you change the width. Enter it into memory once. I'm going to sew down the center of the fabric. I've threaded up with green mezz rayon thread. There, we have our first step. Now we're going to sew the flowers around the dots. Change your thread color to a pastel. I'm using medium pink. Select program number 156 and change the width to 6 millimeters and the length to 6 millimeters. We're going to sew an eyelet around each flower. Position the fabric so the needle will drop just barely 1/8 of an inch above the dot and sew a single pattern. Now, just move the fabric to the next position and continue sewing. First, I would clip the thread on the top and the bottom.
Oh, Philip, I already know where I'm going to use that new design, a new blouse. Oh, but before I get carried away, let's talk for a little bit about that ruffler attachment.
Let's do. It's a real versatile attachment. You can shear, pleat, and attach this all to flat fabric. It looks complicated, but it's not. You have a rack on the top and a set screw on the top. The rack is numbered from 1, 6, 12 to 0 from the right. The number 1 indicates that it will make a pleat every stitch. The number 6 indicates that it will pleat every 6 stitches, and the number 12 indicates that it will pleat every 12 stitches, and 0 means that it won't pleat at all. To adjust the setting, just lift the rack and select another number.
We've been talking about pleats. You can also adjust the depth of pleats. To do that, you use the thumb screw on the top. Turn it clockwise to tighten, and you get deeper pleats. Turn it counterclockwise to loosen, and you'll have shallower pleats. And if you want to ruffle, adjust the thumb screw for very shallow pleats. Set the rack at 1, and you'll get a pleat every stitch at an average stitch length. Let's go to the machine, and I'll show you how to properly attach your ruffler. I've already removed the presser foot and the ankle. Then I attach the clear buffer into the needle clamp by removing the needle and unscrewing the needle clamp screw all the way. Now there are 2 sizes of buffers that come with the ruffler, and you will need to use the longer of the 2 on your 1475 CD. Just slip it over the needle clamp and replace the white needle clamp screw. Then reinsert your needle. Next, take the silver thumb screw that came with your ruffler and screw it into the hole in the presser bar and tighten it just enough so it doesn't fall out. The forked arm of the ruffler goes around the needle clamp. The two prongs go around the needle presser bar with the thumb screw between them. Next, tighten the thumb screw. Before we go on, let's look at a sample of pleats and ruffles. This sample was sewn with the rack on number 6 and the thumb screw tightened all the way clockwise. This sample was sewn with the rack on number 1 and the thumb screw loosened almost all the way counterclockwise. Let's go back to the machine. Now we're ready to ruffle. I've set the rack on number 6 and tightened the thumb screw to make deep pleats. And I've put the fabric between the metal projections right here. If you put the fabric against the feed dogs, you'll only get a plain flat stitch instead of ruffles. Now, just sew away. There, perfect little pleats. To gather or sure, I just move the rack to number 1, and I'll loosen my thumb screw. As I sew, I would adjust it for the amount of shearing. Now it looks like it was gathered with a shearing foot. This skirt, Philip, goes with the French hand-sewn blouse we saw earlier, and it was done on the ruffler.
Well, I know you pleated and sewed that at the same time, but how did you determine the settings so that they ended up the same? Isn't it a little tricky?
Oh, no, Philip, it wasn't the least bit tricky. What I did was take my yoke pattern, divide it into 4s, and take that measurement and cut a strip of fabric. Then I took the piece that was to be ruffled, divided that into 4s, used that measurement to cut another strip of fabric. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you how to place the fabrics. Place the fabric to be gathered on the bottom between the same metal projections as we did before. The flat fabric needs to be on top, but under this very short metal piece. All you have to do now is lightly guide the fabrics and keep them feeding smoothly. It's that quick and easy. Now, if your fabrics don't match exactly, that's all right. Just rip them apart, adjust the thumb screw to give you more or less ruffling, and when they match exactly, you're ready to ruffle on your garment.
It really is easy to set the ruffler up, and it gives you such professional results.
It does, Philip. I'm so tired of pulling gathering threads only to have them break midway through. Now I can ruffle in no time. But this is an interesting technique. Philip, tell us more about this.
Yes, I'd really like to show everyone how to do bobbin work, and it is just what it sounds like. We wind heavy thread onto the bobbin. Any thread that can't be used in the eye of the needle usually can be wound onto the bobbin. Now, because the thread that we want to be seen is in the bobbin, we'll sew with the right side of the fabric down to the bed of the machine.
These must be the threads you're using. I especially like this one.
Yes, this is Pearl Crown Rayon, and this is Madeira Decor, and Why I Like Candlelight. But before we talk about the thread, let's look at stabilizers. You could either use freezer paper, water-soluble backing, or a stitch and tear. Now, I do like to match the thread and the needle to the color of the thread in the bobbin. And as far as winding it, you can hand wind it if you'd like, but I prefer to wind it on the machine. If the thread is on a spool that will fit onto the holder, then use it and wind the thread just as you would regular thread. However, if it's like this pearl cotton and will not fit on the holder, then place the thread either in your lap or on the bed of the machine and bring it up through the tension disc and over to the bobbin. I think you'll agree that this is much faster than winding it by hand. Remember to wind the bobbin slowly. Since we're working with heavy thread in the bobbin case, we need to talk about tension adjustment. Your bobbin case has been set for normal thread and normal sewing. To loosen the bobbin case tension, just turn the large black screw counterclockwise. To retighten it, turn it clockwise. The thread should pull very smoothly from the bobbin with very little resistance. If you're going to do a lot of bobbin work, you might want to consider getting an additional bobbin case. I have one at home. Put the bobbin into the case and let's put it in the machine and sew this sample out. Program number 200, a maxi-stitch row of flowers, looks very pretty done in bobbin work, so that's the one I've selected. Set your needle tension at normal and place the fabric face down on the needle plate with the stabilizer facing up. The first thing I like to do is bring the bobbin thread up to the top. If you leave it under the fabric, you never know where it is, and it almost always winds up being sewn down exactly where you don't want it. I want you to notice that I'm not going to sew fast. I like to give the machine time to lay down the threads. You should also keep the speed consistent. Don't slow down and then speed up, or you'll wind up with loops and pulled threads. Let's sew this program. What we get is a very bold look. This time I've selected program number 206, another Maxi program. I'll sew it for you and watch our speed. Not a traditional color for a flower, but still very effective. Bobbin work can be very dramatic and fun to experiment with. In fact, I no longer look at a thread and wonder if I can use it through the eye of the needle because I know it'll work in the bobbin case. I can even go into a yarn shop and needlecraft shop today and find something that'll work in the bobbin case.
That's right, Philip. I keep my eyes open everywhere now. And I might mention, too, that you don't have to just use Maxi-Stitches for bobbin work. Some of the other built-ins will work as well. Even some of the satin stitching, as long as you lengthen the stitch long enough so the threads won't pile up on themselves. I think there are 3 rules for bobbin work. Experiment, experiment, experiment.
You're so right, Crystal. Anytime you spend experimenting with stitches on your machine or needles and fabric is time well spent. I keep a notebook at home of the techniques I've tried, even those that didn't work, because I might use them later for another idea.
That's a good idea, Philip. I think I'll start a reference book like that as well. I'll bet it saves a lot of time, too, because you have all the information right there at your fingertips when you need it the most.
Well, I've enjoyed showing you these techniques and ideas.
And I know you're anxious to go to your machine and try these new ideas and explore even more. Let your imagination go wild.
So enjoy your creative 1475 CD, and goodbye from me, Philip Pepper.
And from me, Crystal Thoma.